Sphere Handbook started, the first one was in 1998, and that was a different time. Enormous challenges which have evolved in the last 25 years. So I would say actually that the Sphere Handbook is needed now more than ever.
The Sphere standards are to protect the people's dignity by ensuring that we have quality and accountability in our humanitarian work. It is more important than ever because the number of crises every year and every day we face are increasingly complex crises where we have people's dignity at risk. We make sure that everyone has access to quality assistance, not just access to assistance, but access to assistance in minimum qualities that we need to ensure.
The standards are global. I just want to say that as well, that standards are minimum. Crises where people really are not receiving the right humanitarian assistance, if any. Some people might say, well, let's forget about quality. Let's forget about trying to do the best or trying to do the minimum. Let's just do what we can. We say, well, if you give up on the standards, you're giving up on dignity, because the standards all lead to respecting people's dignity.
The Sphere standards play a really critical role in defining our best practice as IFRC. IFRC is a membership organization, so we're made up of our Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies, and that means that we have 191 members in 191 countries, and of course those national societies have different capacities depending on where we are in the world. And the Sphere standards give us a guiding light in order to bring that consistency across our humanitarian work around the world.
It is then an important and powerful advocacy tool. We raise our words, we say this is what people need and this is what we need to achieve. So both operationally and advocacy-wise, Sphere standards are important. It is a collective outcome of a lot of experience from around the world, from Americas to Asia, from Africa to Europe. It is a collective thought of various practitioners, and those are Sphere focal points and members. Today in Antalya, we are meeting with them, and they are the ambassadors of this quality across the world. Now, again, people come, the practitioners are arriving here to have discussions from their own respective perspectives, and this will keep Sphere standards alive and relevant to today and the future needs.
In the Philippines, Sphere standards, also including core humanitarian standards, is widely used during our emergency work, responding to natural disasters such as earthquakes, typhoons, volcanic eruptions, and also man-made hazards like conflict. So it is widely used to ensure that the humanitarian needs of the people are provided with dignity. So organizations in the Philippines are used to using the Sphere standards and the core humanitarian principles.
In last Kahramanmaraş earthquakes, 2023, there was a huge earthquake we experienced, 11 provinces affected. And now we are working in Hatay province, one of the most affected provinces. So we are especially applying the standards based on the need assessment and situation analysis data, which means we are applying Sphere program cycle requirements.
In Pakistan, we work directly with affected communities, but we also support organizations in Pakistan, the local government line departments as well, and academia, in supporting them in capacity enhancement, technical support, mentoring, and coaching. And in the Asia-Pacific region, as a regional partner, we engage and support focal points in that region.
We are in contact with the international organization, national organization, even the leaders of local communities. And once we are in contact with them, we have the follow-up, we have the feedback, and it helps us by the training, building capacity. That is the way we try to follow.
We are in the process of capacity building, and our interest is to attract sphere handbook and sphere standards across our so-called DPPISC region. We have our DMTP. This is a disaster management training program, and through this program we are providing the opportunities for the member states and the national civil protection authorities or institutions that are nominated by the national civil protection authorities to build their own capacities in implementing the sphere standards.
La Red Esfera Bolivia está conformada por 17 agencias humanitarias, ONGs nacionales, exteriores, etcétera, y 17 personas individuales. Fundamentalmente en las normas relacionadas a agua, saneamiento, higiene, seguridad alimentaria y nutrición y campamentos. Pero con el COVID hemos tenido una relación directa con el Ministerio de Salud.
Sphere standards and CHS was the main guiding principle we are advocating at present, and also we are following that. And we are working in several sectors, especially disaster management, then water sanitation, shelter, and capacity building. So in the community development, we focus on education and orphan children.
Yes, sure. We do work directly with the beneficiaries, and we have adapted the entire charter of the Sphere's handbook into our own operation strategy. The entirety of the handbook of the Sphere really is now have been fully consolidated and integrated into our own operational program.
We have a strong sense of training and capacity building. We try to impart workshops and trainings and courses to all kinds of humanitarian and social actors, and as well as implementing the standards directly on the field. In that sense, we found out that even the foundational chapters of the handbook, the ethical package as we call them, has been tremendously useful, because that's what allows us to really empower the population, to see them with strengths and not just as victims, to find out their abilities, to bring them to the answer, to the response, to include them in the response.
Thinking of Sphere, we are committed as a relief alliance. We have committed ourselves, and all the member agencies as well committed themselves to implement the Sphere standards or to work according to the Sphere standard.
What we are trying to give to humanitarian frontline workers, but also staff in the offices of the coalition and any other organization in Germany and our partners, is to get to the core, so to our beliefs, to our role, to our common principles, rights and duties, and to our commitment.
The most important part of it is the accountability, transparency, and then the communication. So we have a very positive impact on the transparency and an accountability, not just toward donors who provide the funding for the project, but also for the people.
I think one of the positive impact of using the Sphere and the core humanitarian principles, it has built trust from the communities because they see the efforts of organizations using the Sphere standards. So this is something that is very important when communities trust us as an organization working on emergency response.
We got acquainted with the Sphere exactly in the time when the refugee crisis arrived in Moldova. And it was right on time because it was exactly knowledge that we were missing, what we needed to have the capacities and the knowledge to respond adequately to a crisis.
So during the Ukraine crisis response, the Sphere handbook became a vital tool in our intervention with Ukrainian refugees, especially for food security and food distribution that we had in our social stores.
After we became focal points, we started to intensively train our staff on the manual. And now we are engaging in these trainings also representatives from other local NGOs, but also representatives, social workers from governmental institutions who were also frontliners and responding to the refugee crisis.
During the UCR program, we had partnerships with local authorities and other organizations. We are now in negotiation with the emergency response department in Romania to see how we can engage and introduce sphere standards in the national strategy for interventions.
Trabajamos básicamente en sectores específicos, por ejemplo, mi campo es de alojamientos y asentamientos temporales. Trabajamos en la respuesta a diferentes situaciones en Colombia, como son desastres, temas de conflicto, también el tema de los flujos migratorios actuales en la región.
Nos complementamos con acompañamiento y asesoría hoy en día a las organizaciones que están trabajando en todo el tema migratorio, pero también Colombia vive un tema de conflicto armado interno que ha obligado a la movilización y al desarrollo de unas acciones humanitarias dentro del territorio. Basado en eso, pues nosotros estamos acompañando no solamente en la asesoría directa, sino también en buscar a otras personas ya formadas, acompañarlas a que formen de manera de calidad, y somos el enlace y el empalme con la oficina de Esfera en Ginebra para asesorías, acompañamiento.
Dentro de Ecuador tenemos este alcance, ¿no? En el cual esta cartera de Estado ha podido asumir el punto focal de Esfera a nivel internacional por parte de Ecuador. Brindamos el soporte en lo que son cursos básicos y de igual forma para lo que son los formadores de formadores. Existe en Ecuador una institucionalización de la norma. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? De que esta norma llega hasta el nivel de una política pública. Estas normas llegaron a ese nivel en el año 2020 y desde ese año se han podido actualizar varios instrumentos que maneja Ecuador en las diferentes ramas que tenemos y lo que establece el Manual Esfera.
I've been promoting Sphere Standard and CHS for nearly a decade now, and it's very nice to see all this interest coming in.
Japan is expected to have the Nankai Trough earthquake, which is 100 times severe than the March 11 earthquake disaster happened in 2011. So it's going to be massive. And then normally the government of Japan operates the response within the country, not receiving the international support. And then I think that the time we must know, or the government must know the standards so that international support and coming to support us. But if we don't have the common language, we cannot, or the country, the nation of Japan cannot protect the dignity of the affected population.
In Bangladesh, as there is too many disasters we are experiencing, so IFRC is doing support pre-disaster, during disaster and after disaster program, along with the Bangladesh Red Crescent societies. Currently, we are hosting the Secretariat of Sphere Community Bangladesh. Now, in every 2 years, we are actually handing over the Secretariat to any of the other organizations who are member with the Sphere. Who are the member of the Sphere Community Bangladesh, they are also involving with the different clusters. We have involved with the, so like when there is any emergencies, so all the partners come up with the to the people to serve with the standards. How we can maintain the standards? Basically, through the cluster, that we set the minimum standards. We shared the Sphere guideline over there, and they are also trained.
We are living an era of polycrises, of that layering of disasters on top of each other, of complex emergencies on top of disasters, and it does make it extremely difficult to respond to the humanitarian needs.
Today there are 120 conflicts happening, extreme conflicts, tragedies happening. It's unbelievable what we're seeing. We need to do much better. That's why we need to be so motivated that when we go back to wherever we work, that we're holding up the Charter and that we're holding up the minimum standards and saying, look, we need to reach this standard, therefore we need to respect people's dignity.
So at times it gets very difficult in various contexts to apply the minimum standards. And sometimes there's also lack of resources. So you want to meet the minimum standards, but then there's also a debate, can you help more people survive?
And when you reflect these affected people, the problem begin more and more complex, and you need to cover a lot of things. So that's why I think that from all over the world, people can be together and to give their experience for this.
I mean, I think it's challenging, but I also think that we have so many tools now at our disposal in terms of information dissemination and even tools that can help us to aggregate information. And so I think we also have more ability to respond because of that information and data than we ever had before.
But I think it's important to understand from users of the Sphere standards, like what are some of the challenges they face in different contexts, and then find solutions based on that, because it may not be a one-size-fits-all. It's quite complex.
It's sad to say there are many things which are out of our control. But as we said, standards are principles, are not rules. And we try to adapt. And it's like you, good organizations, good people, and committed humanitarian actors can try to adapt to cope with the new situation, because it's very difficult to foresee what can happen. But thanks to standard, we can apply them accordingly.
If you had to do this alone as an individual, the task would be just so enormous, you would crash under it. So what I see also in this forum here are different constellations of focal points.
Creo que algo bien importante es precisamente el trabajo en equipo. Cada vez las situaciones son más complejas y se requiere del apoyo de los demás colegas para poder abordar los desafíos que estamos viviendo como mundo. Creo que dentro de los mensajes claves de Esfera está el de conectar. Y conectar es precisamente empezar a intercambiar experiencias con otros colegas de otras regiones para buscar soluciones a los desafíos que muchas veces son compartidos.
There are 3 individuals together in a country like we saw in Colombia, but also in Germany they have a similar setup. You have institutions, you have Bosnia-Herzegovina has a very interesting setup where there's 3 institutions, one of which is a government institution, and together they form the focal point. And that triangulation and that aspect of not having to take decisions alone or having to face external actors alone is really important.
Create a network also, being a brotherhood, that okay, we can share later as well, that okay, if there is any challenge or any good thing, any good case stories, it also helps for my countries as well, that okay, we may match. And if anything from my countries, if I can share, so maybe it also enrich other countries. If they wish, they can do and learn.
The Sphere Handbook is voluntary. It's not a rule book. It's not just a handbook. It's way more than that. And it's all about the people. And so it's a voluntary handbook, and the people at this forum are all volunteers. Focal points of Sphere, volunteers, and that's amazing.
Tenemos como una herramienta que podemos utilizar, una herramienta que está muy bien diseñada, que va a los valores del ser humano. Es decir, que no solamente es la asistencia en emergencia o la técnica, que también debemos de saber, pero nosotros queremos profundizar en esos valores humanos.
When you try to apply it, you can be a good humanitarian. If each of us apply it and try to understand, not 100%, but try to understand and to put in place its standards and the principles, we will help and we can save lives.
The values that we adopt in Sphere are dignity, learning, and inclusion. These three values will be our guiding light to revise the Sphere standards in future. Some issues will not change. It is the keeping people at the center of our work and their dignity at the center of our work. Evolving challenges and opportunities as well, like the issues that comes with new technologies like AI, the climate, the environmental sustainability are new and more highly important issues that we need to adopt into our work and into our standards as well.
The point is that Sphere cannot integrate more and more themes into its handbook because it will eventually explode. It will become too complex. And so I think the big challenge for the next revision, and this is my personal view, is that Sphere will need to become leaner again, simpler, and develop very strong and good links with those very important themes so that Sphere can really be that entry point into humanitarian response.
We are sure at least we are on the right path in terms of the capacity and accountability, because in any interventions, we are returning to Sphere minimum standards and we are checking our intervention reliability.
But basically, what we want is that the core will stay, that our values of humanity, our values to ensure that people have a right to life with dignity, that this stays. And of course, the technical chapters, everything changes, but it's not complete change, so we just have to make adaptations.
I think the handbook is already good in itself, but I think more improvements on capacity building at the community level is needed so that communities see the importance of Sphere standards in implementing emergency work within the communities.
We really need to include the local population, the affected community since the beginning. Who is there? What do they need? What do they want? How do they see themselves in the crisis? How do they want to overcome, and what do they want to become afterwards? Trying to find people's true aspirations and expectations and see how we can help them achieve them. I believe it's what will help us to stay grounded and to navigate these more complicated crises that we will see in the next few years.
Dignity is not just a word. Humanity is not just a word. Impartiality, neutrality, we have to fill it with context. And I think the more we know about the people we are assisting to, and the more we are involving the people in sustain their own lives, the better we will create understanding, commitment, and mutual work towards a better goal.
A focal point should have the fire of wanting to promote Sphere because they are convinced that it is a really useful tool. Focal points in terms of the handbook revisions are more and more really crucial actors to bring the revision vibe into a country and to activate important country actors to get engaged in the revisions.
What we need to do is make sure that they're not giving up and we're not giving up, because without hope, that's when despair comes in. So I have hope for the future. I think we can work through these issues. I do think that the world is going to get even more challenging, hard as it is to say. Life is going to get harder for a humanitarian. But I think if we get our house in order, we can really take humanitarian aid into the next generation.
Really just heartened to see a diversity of partners here together from all walks of life, from all different kinds of humanitarian organization. Gives me a lot of faith. It reminds me that the humanitarian system is not in crisis, but responding to a world in crisis, and that each of these good people working so hard to make sure that we do right by communities.
Siempre tenemos lecciones que aprender en cualquiera de nuestras actuaciones, nos damos cuenta que sí podemos cambiar las cosas, que en nuestra pequeña medida hemos podido cambiar la situación de muchas personas, que sobre todo no está simplemente en el hecho del hacer cuando se necesita, sino en la preparación, que también nos hace mejores como seres humanos.
Me personally, and I think here I align with the mission and the vision of Caritas Moldova, but I think it's the mission and vision of all humanitarians that we live in a peaceful world where people have equal chances to develop, to live with dignity. And as we are humanitarians, the basic word here is human.
I believe in humanity. Let's be honest, although we have conflicts, crises all over the globe, but still, we are human beings, and it was shown here during the last 3 days, there is humanity, and this should be the guiding principle.
I hope that someday the world will never need the humanitarian workers anymore.